Hi everyone, this is Scoia'teal and welcome to channel Duello. In this video, we're going to be talking about the meta post-patch 10.1. I've done a similar video last month and I think many people liked it, and it is one of the top viewed videos that I shot ever. So I'm really happy and pleased with your interest. Thank you very much for that. So I'm gonna kind of repeat that in this video, and hopefully you're gonna like it again. Okay, so we're gonna talk about each faction first, and then I'm gonna talk about meta overall. And it won't be surprising for you that I'm not really pleased with the meta post 10.1, and there are some reasons for that. I'm gonna talk about them as I said at the end of the video. So let's just move faction by faction, and I'm gonna start with the strongest faction this season, which is Syndicate. Okay, so Syndicate King of Beggars received a nerf. It is a major nerf, but I wouldn't say it's a game-changing or meta-changing nerf, because well, I mean, it was a well-deserved nerf. It didn't kill the card, and it's still really strong, and we can see it in almost every Syndicate deck. So what was the nerf? Well, first of all, I mean, he used to be 10 provisions. It was nuts. So right now it's 12, which is well-deserved. And they kind of fixed the counter thing. It was 9, now it's 12. But the upside of this is still exists. Now you're gonna have to play 2 cards to get that, but at least it is preventing, you know, for the players to not include any tribute cards but Savola. At least it is preventing that, so we kind of need 1 more card. So what did the top players do to fix this problem? They either added, you know, the bronze tribute card, Salamandra Mage or Mages, maybe some of them include a couple of them, and then Morelsi with tribute 6, and in some decks there are Ludovicus running around. So those 3 cards are kind of supporting King of Beggars right now. So what is the best list? Well, the question is, should you go non-devotion or devotion? If you go devotion, there is the luxury of using Orson Jr. obviously. If you go non-devotion, you can use, you know, Royal Decree. So you're gonna choose one of them. If you don't choose Royal Decree, well, I mean, as you all know, the card that is replacing that is the Vivaldi Bank, and Vivaldi Bank is not really dependable. If you don't draw your Savola, and if it is at the end of your deck, there is no way you're drawing your Savola. But if you have Royal Decree, Savola is guaranteed. But at the same time, this list is, I mean, even though it's not using Royal Decree, it is more, I would say, consistent. How do you do that? Well, at least you have some rooms to include cards like Sewer Raiders for, you know, extra thinning. And then there's the option of running Horson Jr., which is an amazing card. And this is pretty good, but I mean, as I said, if you don't draw your Savola, you may lose the game. Still, it's a powerful deck, so there will be some cases if you don't draw your Savola, you may win the game. So it's not like you miss 1 card, you lose the game, but I mean, it loses a lot of strength. And sometimes without Savola, you can make King of Beggars come out of your deck, because when you look at it, I mean, Morelsi has tribute 6, Ludovicus has tribute 5, 11. So if you play your mage, Salamandra Mage, it's tribute 4, so 15. So again, King of Beggars could come out, but you're gonna miss out Savola and Savola's Frightener, obviously. Well, what about the advantages? I mean, let's talk about the long round and short round potential. Well, the short round potential is just crazy. I think it's the best deck for short round. If you have the Savola King of Beggars combo remaining in your deck, I don't think there's any deck that can, you know, pass you in points, especially if you have the leader remaining. If you haven't used the leader, it is a 30+ point combo. it's really, you know, hard to overcome that. So most of people, I mean, do you want to bleed this deck or not? I mean, you put yourself in opponent's shoes. I mean, if you try to bleed this deck, I mean, if they can defend the bleed and somehow they save their Savola to the last round, you're kind of screwed, and you may also lose your card advantage while you're doing that. So it is not a great situation. So the best scenario is, you know, you try to win uneven if you're on playing red coin. But if this deck is playing on red coin, well, it's gonna be a struggle for you. It is really difficult to top this. So you just hope that a Syndicate player, you know, drew bad. So this deck is really strong. So I mean, most of the websites are putting this on tier 1. I would strongly agree with that. It is really a consistent and a very good strong deck. It can also play long rounds pretty good, because, you know, you have cards like Horsan's Freak Show, and it is possible to you know, keep Horsan safe with using your leader, as long as you're guessing what the opponent's playing. So if there's no answer to him, it will be really quite good. And on top of that, you have Horsan Jr., Professor, and Morelsi. So I mean, you have some mid-range options like Horsan Jr. and Professor. So Morelsi is your, you know, Toll Punish, and Freak Show is gonna, you know, clear out the board, obviously, especially if you combine it with the tribute coming from, I mean, not tribute, bounty coming from Kurt. So that's really powerful. I mean, there were times that, you know, I won the long round and then, you know, just won easily on the short round with, you know, Savola combo. There's also poison potential in this deck, so don't forget that. So it is also a, you know, tall punish option. But the Syndicate player usually uses their poison in the first round. Let's talk about the second list, the non-devotion list. By the way, I'm going to be talking about most of the decks that are listed on Team Leviathan's website. I think it is the best website in terms of, you know, providing meta analysis and, you know, deck lists. So I mean, there are some options, but I think at least they, you know, update their list consistently. At least for the last couple of months, there were a time that they didn't post anything. So please make sure to check that website. And the second option is the non-devotion jackpot. If you're playing non-devotion, I think it could be a good idea to go for bounty. And this deck is doing that, but it's not a full bounty deck. You know, it is kind of a mixture of bounty and control. And there are some engines. And I mean, not engines, but a strong combo with Caesar and, you know, Siggy. That's a really powerful combo. And you can put your baggers next to Siggy, and, you know, executioners, and even Horsan's Freak Show and Savola. So Caesar is pretty good in this list. In addition to that, you have double Witch Hunter Executioner, the Witchfinder herself, and you know, Freak Show. But as you see, I mean, we're running Morelsi, so all of the lists are running that. We're not running Graydon or Brute. It is possible to play them as well. And we're running Royal Decree, so we can, you know, pull one of these crucial cards with that. The problem with this deck is these cards, Slander and Witch Hunter. Well, I mean, you need additional bounty giving cards so that Witch Hunter Executioner will be good when you play him. But especially in the first round, this could be a problem. You could lose uneven if you don't draw the cards in a specific way. It is really bad on blue coin, I'm gonna admit that. But in the long round, this could be better compared to the other version, because you're running double Executioner and a Freak Show. But there are times like if you miss, you know, one of the Executioners and use one in the first round to, you know, get the round control, if the opponent finds an answer for your Freak Show, you're kind of screwed. Because, you know, Witchfinder, okay, she will put bounties, but if you don't have any unit to kill the opponent's units, you're screwed. So there was a game like that. I just, you know, watched the opponent play unit after unit while doing nothing. So it was really awful. I mean, do you go for full bounty, you know, to prevent that? I have another list for that, but let's take a look at that. Is that no, hold on. Yeah, this one's running brute, for example, but I mean, I'm not running Sigi in this deck, and Sigi is just an amazing card, so you're missing out on Sigi, but you're having obviously more control. Like I mean, you can run Graydon or Morasi, it really doesn't matter. But I mean, brute is again great in short round, especially in the final round. But as I said, I mean, you're missing out on Sigi, and Sigi is a great way to start the bleed. Since this deck is really good on short round, you usually want to bleed the opponent in the second round. And again, I mean, Sigi is really great to start the bleed. I mean, with Bountiless especially, it is really difficult to bleed the opponent, so that's a disadvantage. Anyway, so that's all I'm gonna say about Syndicate, so let's move to the next faction. Okay, so the next faction is the faction that everybody loves to hate, which is Nilfgaard. I think Nilfgaard is the second most powerful faction in this patch. Well, they didn't lose, you know, any strength. They didn't get any nerfs, and actually they received a buff in Tourney Shalmar. This card has become really good. You know, the 2 provision, you know, buff is amazing when you look at it. So I think it's a great fit for Assimilate. I kind of used this card in the beginning of the month, but after a while I reverted back to my you know, list that I used in the last patch, the classic Syndicate list. So let's take a look at it. I am using this version, but many people are preferring Bribery over Fur Cart. Instead, I'm running Fur Cart and Assassination instead of Bribery and another Illusionist. I really don't like RNG cards, to be honest with you. That's the reason I'm playing Fur Cart. But Bribery could be better in this meta, because, you know, you're already running double Tourney Joust and an Tourney Joust, so maybe you don't need that, you know, much damage card. But sometimes, you know, Assassination could surprise opponents, and Fur Cart is really providing good tempo in the first round if you draw him. And if you're careful, you know, you don't brick Fur Cart and Tactic card. So I would definitely recommend using him, but you know, Bribery is the second option. But I think they're both pretty good. You cannot go wrong with either list. Anyhow, so the rest of the cards are the same in both of the lists. So this is a classic Assimilate deck. Still, you know, Terranova, Brathen, Scooter Graz, you know, the Assimilate coming from Mushy Truffle and, you know, Lydia, Vigo, and so on. So this is a, you know, just a solid list, and this is pretty good in the long round. It is really hard to beat, especially after. And by the way, let's talk about John Calvate. In the last patch, it took some time for people to realize that this card is pretty good. So I started using him in NSA, but so that, I mean, it is possible to draw Calvate even if you're not running Ensley, because, you know, there are sufficient tactics in your lists. So it is really enough to, you know, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I mean, even 6 tactics is enough to run John Calvate, I guess. So with Calvate, you know, you're putting an 8-point body in the first round, so you rarely lose uneven. So it is possible to take the round control. But I mean, you can give the round control, but since you played your Calvate, it will be really easy to defend the bleed. So that's why this card is really good, and you're never gonna complain that you didn't draw your golds. So that's why I like this list a lot. So if I lose the game, it's probably my fault. So you feel really good about it. At least you don't feel awful. But I mean, there will be some times that you're gonna be. I mean, you're unable to draw your Calvate, but it's really rare, like 10 or 15% chance. I mean, you're at least gonna draw him in the second round. But if you're facing, a Clog deck and you haven't drawn your Jean Calvate in the first round, that chance is pretty high. Okay, so what are this deck's chances against other meta decks? So we should always measure up to the Syndicate. Well, with Syndicates, I think it's a I wouldn't say 50-50, but it's almost equal. The chances are equal in my opinion. But I mean, if you take ground control, you should try to bleed your opponents. No, I'm sorry. I meant I thought of myself as a Syndicate player. No, I would recommend actually playing long ground, and you can, do some tempo plays in the first round so that the Syndicate player needs to play 2 cards to catch up with you, and then you're going to go to long round. But in the long round, there is still a chance that you could lose the game. So you gotta really play careful. I think it's a 50-50 toss up. I mean, the better player will usually win the game. But you are guaranteed to draw your cards, but the opponent isn't. So let's correct that. If both players draw their goals, I think Syndicate is more advantageous. But I mean, you're guaranteed, but they are not. But if they draw, you may lose the game. So that's how it's done. So that's why I wouldn't, recommend trying to bleed the Syndicate player. Okay, so against other decks, this is pretty good. I mean, even the greedy decks like Vampires, Rain, and so on, you can win the game. But sometimes against some, really bad decks, if you don't draw your Yennefer's Invocation in the first round, for example, I played against the stupid Mages deck, but it wasn't that Mages deck, it was just the Meditating Mage bullshit. So the opponent played their, Defender, and then started putting Mages on the list. I didn't have Invocation in the first round, so I lost the game. So sometimes you get frustrated by those games, and there is really nothing this list can do to prevent that. Okay, so I think this is a list between tier 1 and tier 2. So Syndicate is slightly stronger than this list. What about other options for Nilfgaard? Well, I think Hyperthin is the best second option for Nilfgaard, because thinning cards, to be particularly Knickers, got a buff. Roach also got a point buff, but I don't think it's really that relevant. But Knickers' provision buff is important. I mean, in my version I'm running Madak, but you don't have to. You could always go for the soldier guy, Ramon. That's also really a good card. And besides, this deck is really fun to play, so I would really recommend it if you don't want to play Assimilate, or you got bored of playing it. But I mean, keep in mind that this is at best a tier 2 deck. I mean, something between tier 2 and tier 3, I would say. So the other version is better. And this deck is not easy to play as either. You could go for Enslave as an alternative to Double Cross, but Enslave is just not a good leader. I wouldn't really recommend it much. And then there is the third and fourth option, which are Clog and Mill. I mean, I only have bad things to say about both decks, and Clog is unfortunately better this season due to the buffs on thinning cards, and people started playing it again. And there is a reason that many people are not playing Gwent this season. Clog is just a toxic deck. CD Projekt Red made a mistake printing those cards. It's definitely not a great game experience when you play against Clog. And unfortunately, people are not realizing it, and they still keep playing it, even though they have options like Assimilate and Hyperthin, which are much more healthier than Clog. And so I don't know, they just don't care about the future of the game, I guess. So I'm gonna call them out. I mean, it really doesn't make sense. I mean, put yourself in opponent's shoes. I mean, it is really awful to play against Clog, so why are you playing it? And Mill is even worse. Fortunately, that deck is not strong, but still some crazy people are playing it. I don't know why. And every time I win against Mill, I feel really great. And don't ever send GGs to players that play Mill. I mean, I already shot a top toxic videos. I mean, if you're interested in that, please make sure to check that out. So I mean, you have these options. Why are you playing those? I just don't understand. I mean, some people just like to torture other players, I guess. Okay, so enough about Nilfgaard. So let's move to the next faction. Okay, the third best faction this patch is Skellige, in my opinion. And Skellige is really in a pretty good state. CD Projekt Red managed to balance out the decks, and there are 3 pretty good decks and a couple of good Skellige decks. So you don't have to just run the king of beggars like in Syndicate. You have alternatives, and that's pretty good, I guess. So out of these decks, so let's first talk about the Battle Trance deck. I think this is the best Skellige deck this season. Nothing has changed here. Depending on meta, you could change some of the cards. This is the version that I'm playing, but you could feel free to try out other stuff. Most of people are not running Bride of the Sea, but I think Bride of the Sea is a phenomenal card. It is even better in Battle Trance, compared to the Rain deck. Well, obviously, I mean, yeah, she is a part of the combo, but being able to replay your alchemy cards is just amazing in this deck. So this deck has an insane long round. I think it's one of the best long round decks in the game. So what you need to do is try to get round control when playing this deck, and then dry pass or go down to 7 cards or something like that. But if there's an option to bleed the opponent with Sunset Wonders, you should definitely take that option, because the short round isn't bad either for this list. With Gedrinith you can produce a lot of points, especially if you saved your leader, so don't forget that. So I think this deck is really good because you can play both long and short rounds. And I think this is a tier 2 deck, definitely, and also close to tier 1. I think it's similar to Nilfgaard. Nilfgaard's Assimilate is also pretty good at both long and short rounds. So I think when you can play both long and short rounds, your deck is usually at least tier 2. Anyway, so nothing really important to talk about Battle Trance here. The list is pretty much the same, at least the core of the list. What you need to do is just make your Crocodile Preachers as big as possible. So with Mushy Truffle and doing Wanderer combo, you're gonna abuse it as much as you can, and these Clamp Preachers could get up to like 20-25 points, which is just insane for a 4 provision card. And I'm gonna talk about those issues in my next video, by the way. So I'll be shooting another video about the situation or the state of the Gwent after this one. So if you're interested, make sure to watch that as well. So what is the second option here? I usually played this list this season. It's more fun to play compared to Battle Trance. I like control decks better. That's the reason I'm playing this. So this is a pirate deck, but there are some warriors embedded into it, so it is kind of a hybrid deck, because King Brand is really great, and pirate / warrior cards like Invader and Uncrate Raider and Trigvi, they are really good cards. That's why it is a good idea to mix both archetypes. And some cards could change here, like I'm not running Coral, but you could go Coral and remove Blackhand, go Holger Blackhand, and we don't need Delirium as much as we need to do, because you're not seeing Saskia decks anymore. What about the strength of this deck? Well, this is mostly a red coin deck. I mean, this deck is really strong on red coin. You could win on even and then bleed the opponent, and if you really have a great hand, you could 2-0 the opponent. It is really possible. But this deck is not, I wouldn't say it's great. It's a great long round list, and it's not a great short round list either. So it is kind of in between. So it really depends on your discard package. So if you draw your Birna in the first 2 rounds, you have a better chance to win the game. And another important part is Terror of the Seas. If you draw this card in the first round, this ship is gonna get really big and you're gonna get like 17 points or something from it. At least for 7 provision card, it's just insane. So if you draw these cards in a specific order, you could win a lot of games with this list. I mean, I won like 7 games in a row and then lost 4 games in a row. So it is an inconsistent list. That's why I would put it on tier 2. And then there's this rain list. I'm not sure if it's the most updated one because I'm not playing it. I think it's pretty much the same. Well, this is just a deck that abuses Messenger of the Sea. This insane 6 provision bronze cards that go up to like 40-50 points or something like that, thanks to the Ryokan last say. And you could protect them easily with your defender and so on. And then there's the option of Melusine. The deck is insanely good in long run. I think it is the best long round deck in the game. So if the opponent is smart, they will do whatever it takes to get the round control and try to bleed this deck. So if this deck is bled out, and if they have to use their Ryokan, and I mean it is really a low chance to win the short round, but there's still an option. Melusine could get really huge. So if the opponent played smartly, they could maybe somehow save their Melusine, like 25-26 point cards. But again, I mean, if you're playing against Syndicate, so Savola combo will pass that. But still, it's really a good short round finisher. Okay, so that's all about this list. I guess I'm not a fan of playing it because it's kind of boring. And I think it's a tier 3 list because it's susceptible to bleeding, and the opponent will just do whatever it takes to avoid long round, because in long round you're gonna win the game. Okay, so and then there's also the option of going with warriors. Well, I mean, pirate list is better, I guess. And this deck is also depending on discard package, although this is the version that I'm running Blood Eagle, but I haven't really tested this deck much. I haven't played with it. So even with warriors, Skellige is running discard package, so maybe they should do something about that. I mean, I said Skellige is really gonna in a really healthy situation, but you kind of depend on the discard package. And there's also Ursine Ritual option. You could go for Lippy with the recent buffs to Knickers, but I wouldn't recommend it. And this is the self-damage deck, the version that I tested last season. But this deck was really good against Skellige's Guerrilla Maneuver deck because of the self-damage thingy. Especially this card was really a hard counter to, where is that? This veteran card. They can't damage it properly, so it is kind of a awkward card. But I mean, Guerrilla Tactic is out of the picture, so it makes no sense to play this list any longer. And by the way, I didn't talk about that, but the major thing that affected the meta this season is obviously the nerf to Milva. and we're not seeing traps any longer, fortunately. So that's the reason some of the decks are stronger or weaker. So it was really a meta-defining card, that Nilfgaard card. Okay, so enough about Skellige. Let's move to the Scoia'teal. Scoia'teal is unfortunately not the best fourth faction, so I was kinda going from strong to weak. But since I talked about Scoia'teal, I want to discuss about the lists that Scoia'teal are running. Well, the nerf to Milwa has been huge, so and there have been some buffs to invigorate lists. I mean, you could try invigorate with Saskia, or just run the hand boost cards and try to do something, maybe with Gord and so on. But the leader is just not good. I mean, yeah, obviously it's much better compared to the old version, the charge 3. I mean, having charge 3 is just much better, but still it's not enough. And I don't know, what CD Projekt Red can do further to make this deck better. Maybe more cards that benefit from hand boosts, that could be an option. And again, another inherent problem with this deck is you're not guaranteed to have Sheldon Skaggs in your hand like Torque. And another problem is in order to run Torque, you need to play Devotion, and playing non-devotion, playing Devotion in this meta is kind of risky choice, because there's just not enough control options. Like, for Syndicate it's not a problem because you're running Poison, and you could run Poison in Scoia'teal obviously, but it's been almost 2 years that Scoia'teal has used Poison. It's not really good. You're not running cards like Fistek or something like that, so it is really difficult to kill 2 units. Kill 1 unit with 2 poison units in Harmony decks. So again, that's why Devotion is kind of weak. And you can play Nature's Gift, and you can actually add Saskia to Nature's Gift list, but it usually comes up short. There's just not enough points, unfortunately. So I tested out, but I think it's a tier 3 deck. I don't even think it's tier 2, and people kind of memorized it, so it is really easy to play against. You could guarantee drawing Saskia maybe with Call of the Forest, Fav, and cards like that, but you are not actually. So if you can't especially draw her in the first round, there's a strong chance you could lose the game. Even if you draw her, you could still lose the game. Why? Because the reason is Gord. The nerf to Gord has really affected the outcome. You usually come up short. Gord is just not tall enough. That's the reason, I guess. I mean, you have a really strong long round, but you're not running Gezras. So what you'll do is you're gonna obviously get round control with this list. You're gonna bleed the opponent with your cards and so on, but in the short round it's not gonna be enough. The Gord is just not tall enough, as I said. Yeah, I mean, Ethne is pretty good and so on, but there's just not enough points to win the game. What about guerrilla tactics? This is the old list. I haven't really modified it. I mean, you could still run Milva and Saskia, Alzur, and so on. You could do all these combinations, but the nerf to Milva is just huge. The death blow, damage an enemy unit by 1 is just not good enough. So the deck lost. It's the most strong card. I mean, at least 6 or 7 points lost due to this buff, this nerf, and it's just not viable to use her any longer, I guess. I wish they did something else. I mean, yeah, Milva was a really good control card, obviously, but instead of nerfing Nilva, I think should have maybe nerfed guerrilla tactics, decreases provision or something like that. And since we're not seeing you know, this leader, actually some decks came out of the I mean, we didn't see, for example, any mages, Northern Realm mages deck, so now we're seeing them. So anyway, I mean, but at the same time, we're seeing, you know, toxic decks like, you know, Clog and other some, you know, especially in monsters, there are some really, you know, awful decks, you know, that run the Witch's Sabbath a couple of times with Gurnikor and stupid, you know, combos like that. So the reason for that is there's no, you know, Milwa. So if we were playing Milwa, we wouldn't have been able to, you know, see those greedy decks. So I don't know if it was a you know good idea to nerf Nilva. Now looking at it, I mean, she needed nerf, but maybe not like this. But I'm glad that we're not seeing traps. So that I think that's the good side of that nerf. Okay, so let's talk about the monsters next. Okay, monster is slightly better compared to previous season. And what is the best option for monsters? I think vampires is the best option this season. For the sole reason that Milva received a nerf. So since there's no Milva, you could, you know, go for Blood-Scent vampires. And the best list for that is, I think this one, the list that Miyamoto made popular at the end of last season. Now it's been carried over to this season. This list is playing She Who Knows and Witch's Sabbath. You know, normally Witch's Sabbath should be used with, you know, relics, but you could do this in this list. It's even running Curse Scroll, which is the greediest, you know, stratagem option. Normally, if you play Curse Scroll, you just lose the round, but not in this list. You just, you know, draw your missing card and you do your combo, Defender, and then play a couple of letters with operators next to it. And then you could also go for Unseen Elder, and with the Witch's Sabbath, if you can, you know, arrange the cards in a way that you, with Witch's Sabbath, you can get your Cave Troll, Unseen Elder, and a Letter, and you win the game. That's how this deck's, I mean, you usually actually win the game by 2-0ing the opponent. But if you're playing against a heavy control deck, you could have trouble, definitely. And if there's some graveyard hate, like, you know, if they manage to remove your, you know, Cave Troll or one of the Flatters and something like that, you could have trouble. And I really like the well, in this version I'm running a single Squirrel instead of 2 Broxas. And why? Because, I mean, there could be some, you know, really great options in the opponent's graveyard, especially if you're running Mirror. That Squirrel could save your life, I guess. And this deck is extremely consistent. Well, first you have Curse Scroll. We're not running a Neuromancer, but we're running Royal Decree and also Double Cross. So Double Cross will play either your She Who Knows to get Resilience carryover, or, you know, at the end of the game, Regis will be huge, so you can draw your Regis with ADC. And Wisp's Tribute is also a 2-Tor card for Witch's Sabbath if you're missing that, because since there's no Royal Decree, or Double Cross will not draw that. But with Royal Decree, you can draw your Wisp's Tribute, and then she will draw your Witch's Sabbath. And there's also some organic cards. If you have Witch's Sabbath, you can draw one of them. I mean, for example, Spores could play as, I mean, like a Heatwave card, so that's really good. And then if you want to purify your Defender, you have Feast of Blood. I really like this list. But again, I mean, against certain matchups, this could have problem. And you could run out of steam, and there are not a lot of bleeders in the list, so that sometimes that could be a problem. Okay, you're putting a lot of Flatters, but there's just not enough bleed cards, especially in my version, because I'm deducting 1 Bruxa from the list, And this Drowner is actually a funny inclusion. The only reason this card is here is because of Horse Hunt Freak Show. So if you're running against Syndicates, just save your Drowner for that, so that you move it. Okay, so that's I think this is again a tier 2 deck, and but I don't think it's as good as Battle Trance or Nilfgaard decks, but it's pretty close in my opinion. What about other monster decks? Well, I should talk about actual Spear Tip. The old Spear Tip and Spear Tip Asleep cards have been, changed. I use them in several different, monster lists. Actually, I was running that duo in this list, but instead of, playing them, I think playing She Who Knows and these consistency cards is better, I guess. And what about other monster options? Well, you could run Relics and then play your Spear Tip Asleep and Spear Tip cards in that list. And I think they're better in a relic deck because you're really depending on having Sabbath early. So those cards could help you, and having that huge Spear Tip coming out from your graveyard with Witch's Sabbath is really good. And so you gotta run Witch's Sabbath again in this list. So I think this is pretty good, but the Vampires has more points. So that's, I would put this on a tier 3 range. And there's this Spear Tip version of Vampires. And you can also actually, I tried the Spear Tip and his friend in Wild Hunt, but they really didn't work out. So if you want, you could go for Wild Hunt, but it's just not strong enough. And then there is the Overwhelming Hunger option. This version was pretty good, but it was really great against Milva decks. But since there's no Milva, again, there's no point in playing this. Vampires are just better. But you're gonna see some Overwhelming Hunger in the ladder, and they're gonna be running Gurnikora in that list. You're gonna say why, and unfortunately there's a toxic interaction with Erika's Queen. You consume that, and with Abaya and so on, you produce a lot of Gurnikoras, and then you play Witch's Sabbath, and there's the option of redrawing Witch's Sabbath with that neutral card. I forgot her name. So as you see, there's a trend going on here. Witch's Sabbath, I think it is kind of a problematic card, and again, I'm gonna talk about that in my next video. It is kinda a problem for designers. So I'm not sure if it was a good idea to print it in the first place. Anyhow, if you face that kind of attack and you don't have an answer for Gurnikora to hit, if you have Heat Wave for her, the game's over. It is that polarized. Okay, so and then there's the Carapace option, Keltulus. Actually, Spear Tip and a Sleep version go really great in the Carapace deck. I think it's the best fit. You put so many engines on the board, the opponent just can't handle them. But it's really draw reliant. If you can't draw your cards, you are kind of screwed. And you're gonna say, you can say the same thing for every deck. Not really. Some decks are just more consistent, but that deck isn't. Okay, so I think we need to talk about Northern Realms, right? So that's the only faction remaining. Well, Northern Realms is slightly better this season because you can play your Alumni again. Due to the non-existence of Milva, it is possible to play your mages. There are two lists in the meta. One of them is playing Chapter of Wizards and a lot of Alumni producing cards. So this is more of a mages deck, and the other version is everyone's familiar with it. Running both Selkirk and Prince Ansei. And so instead of this deck has Oniromancy and Amphibious Assault. This is a non-devotion list. It's pretty good, but I didn't have huge success with it. And I think the other one is better if you draw your golds. And that deck is extremely inconsistent. There is no way for you to, draw your vengeance. Amphibious Assault isn't drawing it any longer. So that's why, I didn't play Northern Realms, because I know I'm gonna be frustrated by not drawing my high-end golds. Still, it's an option, but I'm not sure if it's a... it is something between tier 2 and tier 3 in my opinion. I mean, that deck used to be better. The buff to Istred is just not enough to play that deck. The Rafar's Vengeance nerf is huge in my opinion. And then, what can you play in Northern Realms other than Inspired Zeal? Well, there isn't really much. The shield deck was good against Milva, so Milva isn't here. As you see, I mean, that card was really huge, so it really defines the meta. You could play Siege actually. I mean, I played a couple of games. It went well actually, but I don't trust the deck, to be honest with you. I mean, I was just lucky in the games that I won. And with Siege, I think it's best to use Pincer Maneuver so that you are guaranteed to draw your Siege, King Hasselt, and Vengeance cards. There's this, round 1 problem. I'm running the King Foltest combo, but it is kinda weak, so it may not be enough. So, and against some decks, Siege is just not good. Unfortunately, Siege isn't as good as, for example, Gednith when you talk about scenarios. So that's one of the reasons. Siege isn't great. And there's this mobilization list that I shot a deck video guide, on my YouTube, on my Duello Turkish channel. Check that out. This list is fun as well. I don't think it's a strong list. You could surprise your opponent if the opponent, because the opponent will not know your list. And yeah, I think that's it. So not much to talk about for Northern Realms. So the season isn't over. There's still a week left. My suggestion for the top 4 faction will be, obviously Syndicate, Nilfgaard, Monsters, and Skellige. I think Scoia'teal and Northern Realms are just not very good in this patch. Okay, so that's it for all the factions. Well, when you look at the meta, and I mean, these are the popular decks, but unfortunately people are still playing the toxic decks, the extremely greedy decks that you hate to play against. We see a lot of them in the ladder. It is not great. I mean, many players are not playing the game any longer, or kinda cease their activity. And we can see that when you look at the leaderboard. We're not seeing the top players' names, and some of the YouTube creators kinda backed away from shooting frequent videos. And I'm enjoying the game, but not as much I used to do. And you gotta admit that, because the game isn't fun due to those decks, but it's not the only problem. There is also the problem, like some decks, I mean, in some matchups, the winner of the game is already decided during the matchup, so it shouldn't be like that. And all of the deck, in almost all of the matchups, you have to bleed your opponent because you don't trust your long round. It wasn't used to be like that. You kind of depended on your micromanagement, micro strategies, and if the opponent makes a slight mistake, you win the game, and so on. But it's not like that any longer. Macro strategies are more important nowadays, and which makes the game kind of boring. And unfortunately, that's the current situation with Gwent. I'm gonna talk about this in my next video. So this is the end of my video. I think it has been a long one. If you really are watching this right now and stuck with me till the end, well, congratulations, and thank you very much. So hope to see you in another Duello video. Bye bye.